Based on the content and your instructions, here is a compelling style story topic line. My wife secretly siphoned $250, $0 from our joint account to buy a house with her affair partner, then filed for divorce claiming I was abusive. Now she's suing me for half the property, and I have no idea how to prove her lies. I found the files, but I will need a moment to review them to craft the story prompt you requested. Please hold on. I never thought I'd be the guy writing something like this, but here I am. It all started with a gut feeling, like that gnawing sensation in your stomach that something's just off. My wife had always been a little high maintenance, but lately she'd been acting weird, avoiding my eyes, canceling plans at the last minute, and always having some excuse about work or needing space. At first, I thought maybe she was stressed, or maybe I was just imagining things. We'd been together for over 10 years, married for 7, and I thought I knew her pretty well. But then, small things started piling up. The first real sign was the missing money. I noticed our joint bank account was draining faster than usual. I'd check the statements, and there'd be charges I didn't recognize: luxury dinners, designer clothes, expensive weekend trips she never mentioned planning. I asked her about it once and she brushed it off, saying she'd been shopping for herself or that it was just a little splurge. But I knew she wasn't the type to spend that kind of money without telling me. Still, I shrugged it off, thinking maybe I was overreacting. But deep down, I felt a strange unease, like I was missing something. Then came the night I found her phone. It was lying on the kitchen table face up, and I saw a message pop up on the screen. It was from some guy named Jake. The message read, "Can't wait to see you tonight. Love you." My heart stopped for a second. I stared at it, trying to process what I was reading. I knew I shouldn't have looked, but curiosity got the better of me. I unlocked her phone and scrolled through her messages. There were dozens of texts, some flirty, some downright explicit. She was planning to meet him at a hotel. My stomach dropped. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I never in a million years thought would cheat on me. She always played the victim, said I was too busy, too focused on work, or that I didn't pay enough attention to her. And now here I was, discovering she'd been lying to my face all along. The worst part, she'd been sneaking around behind my back for months. I kept reading, trying to convince myself I was wrong, but the evidence was staring me in the face. It was like a punch to the chest every time I thought about the money she'd siphoned out of our accounts: $250, zero in total, so she could buy a house with Jake, her new love, as she called him in her texts. I couldn't sleep that night. My mind was racing. How long had she been doing this? How much of our life savings had she blown on some affair? I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious all at once. I had trusted her completely. We built a life together, or so I thought. But now I saw how fragile that trust was. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I didn't see the lies coming. And the worst part, she was making it seem like I was the one at fault. She told me I was controlling, paranoid, and that I didn't understand her needs, that she deserved happiness too, even if it meant lying, cheating, and stealing from us. I remember thinking, how could she be so selfish? How could she betray me like this after all these years? I was trying to hold it together, but inside I was crumbling. That's when I decided I had to confront her. I couldn't keep living in this nightmare. I needed answers, and I needed to know if this was just a fling or something more serious. Little did I know that confrontation would set off a chain of events I never saw coming, events that would change everything. The day I confronted was the day everything changed. I knew I couldn't keep pretending I didn't know. I called her home from work early, told her I had something important to talk about. She sounded annoyed on the phone, but I didn't care. When she walked through the door, she was her usual bitchy self, rolling her eyes, crossing her arms, already throwing attitude before I even said a word. "Look," I started, trying to keep my voice steady. "I found out about Jake. The texts, the money, everything. How long has this been going on?" She scoffed and rolled her eyes. "Oh, please, you're overreacting. This isn't what you think. You're just jealous because I don't want to be stuck in a boring marriage with someone who doesn't appreciate me." I clenched my fists, feeling a mixture of rage and heartbreak. "Don't bullshit me. I saw the messages, the bank statements. The money you siphon out: $250, zero, that's a house with Jake. How could you do this to me?" Her face twisted into a sneer. You don't know anything, you're just paranoid as usual. I was planning to tell you, but you're so controlling I didn't think you'd understand. And honestly, I deserve to be happy. That was the moment I realized she was lying through her teeth. She'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. She didn't care about our marriage or my feelings. She was just after what she wanted, her new life, her new man, her new house. She looked at me with that bitchy glare like I was an obstacle she needed to get rid of. I lost it. The anger boiled over. I told her I wanted the truth, that I deserved honesty after everything we'd been through. She sneered again, said I was possessive, and accused me of being jealous because I couldn't handle her success and independence. She kept insisting that I was the problem, that she was just trying to find herself, that I was too controlling to see her real needs. I felt a wave of sadness mixed with fury. How did it come to this? How did I go from building a life with someone I trusted to standing here, feeling like a fool? I looked at her, her face twisted with contempt, and I realized I didn't recognize her anymore. She was a stranger, selfish, manipulative, and full of lies. I told her I wanted her out of the house, that I wasn't going to be part of this anymore. She laughed and said I was overreacting, that I was just jealous of her new happiness, that she was entitled to her affair and her money because I'd been neglecting her. She had the nerve to tell me I was abusive, that I'd yelled at her and was too controlling. That was her way of trying to turn it around, make me look like the bad guy. But I knew better. I knew she'd been lying to me for months, maybe years. I knew her game. I told her she was done, that I wanted a divorce, and that I'd be taking everything she'd stolen, including her new house. She just smirked and said she'd see me in court, that she'd fight me for half the property, even though I had no idea how I was going to prove her lies. That moment left me hollow. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and completely lost. I didn't sleep that night, replaying the confrontation over and over. Every word, every sneer, every lie she'd told. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I hadn't seen the cracks in our marriage sooner. But deep down, I knew this wasn't just about the money or the affair. It was about her complete lack of respect for me, for what we built together. Now I was standing at a crossroads. Do I fight her in court? Do I try to fix what's broken? Or do I walk away and start over? The pain of betrayal was still fresh, but I knew one thing: this wasn't going to end quietly. Was determined to take everything she could, and I had no idea how to stop her. All I knew was that I had to be ready for whatever came next. After that explosive confrontation, I knew I couldn't just sit around and hope things would get better. Was relentless, already planning her next move. She started filing papers for a divorce, claiming I was abusive. Nothing could have been further from the truth, but she's good at lying and she knew how to spin a story. She's always been manipulative, a real bitch when she wants to be. That's when I realized she was trying to take everything: my house, my savings, even my reputation. I had to act fast. I started digging into her finances more thoroughly. I knew she'd been siphoning money from our joint account 250, just like I'd suspected. I didn't know exactly how she managed to do it without me noticing, but I found suspicious transfers and large cash withdrawals. I hired a private investigator to follow her, just to see if she was sneaking around or meeting Jake in secret. Turns out, she'd been meeting him at a hotel near our place, sometimes twice a week. I got pictures of her sneaking into the hotel late at night, her looking all flirty and excited. That was the final nail in the coffin for me. Meanwhile, was making a mess of things legally. She filed for divorce, claiming I'd been abusive. She even went as far as accusing me of yelling at her during our fights, which was total bullshit. I knew her tactics. She's always been the victim, the innocent wife who's just misunderstood. She's good at twisting the truth to her advantage. But I also knew I had to protect myself, so I started gathering evidence. I kept every text, every email, every bank statement that could prove her lies. I also reached out to a lawyer who specializes in divorce and financial disputes. I wanted to be ready for whatever she threw at me. The more I looked into her financial moves, the angrier I got. She'd been secretly siphoning money into accounts she kept hidden, enough to buy a house with Jake. I found out she'd taken out a second mortgage on our house without telling me, then used the money to fund her affair and her new life. It was like she was planning this all along, carefully covering her tracks until she was ready to run. I felt sick thinking about how long she'd been lying to me, how she'd betrayed everything we built together. All those years of trust, shattered in a matter of months. I also learned she'd been lying about her abusive behavior. She'd been provoking fights, I'm sure of it. She'd push me, yell at me, then call me aggressive when I responded. She's good at making herself look innocent. I realized she'd been using the legal system as a weapon, trying to paint me as the bad guy so she could get more from the divorce settlement. But I wasn't backing down. I had proof, bank records, her texts, the photos of her sneaking out, all pointing to her lies. I was determined to fight her accusations and prove her deception. That's when I decided I needed to get ahead of her. I told my lawyer to prepare for the worst, and I started documenting everything. I even hired a financial expert to trace the money she'd stolen. I knew the court would look at our assets, and I wanted to make sure she didn't walk away with a penny more than she deserved. I also confronted her directly, telling her I had enough evidence to prove her cheating, stealing, and lying. She laughed, called me paranoid, and said I was crazy for suspecting her. But I knew the truth, and I was ready to fight for what's mine. The emotional toll was brutal. I'd wake up every morning feeling betrayed, angry, and exhausted. I'd ask myself what I did wrong, how I missed all the signs. But deep down, I knew this wasn't about me. It was about her greed and her manipulative ways. I felt stupid for trusting her for so long. Now I was facing a legal battle I didn't want, but I knew I had no choice. I had to protect myself, my future, and whatever was left of the life I thought I had with her. I wasn't going down without a fight. The legal battle was like nothing I ever expected. She was relentless, twisting every piece of evidence I had against me, trying to paint herself as the victim. Her lawyer played the victim card hard. She claimed I was controlling, emotionally abusive, and that I'd been violent during heated moments. That was complete bullshit, but I knew she'd do anything to win. I was already preparing for the worst, gathering every shred of proof I could find. Every text, every bank statement, every conversation. I knew the truth would come out eventually, but I had to stay one step ahead. Meanwhile, pushed her narrative with the courts. She filed a motion claiming I'd been physically abusive, which was a total fabrication. She said I'd yelled at her, called her names, and even threatened her. I knew she was trying to use her stories to get more from the divorce settlement. She'd always been good at manipulating people, especially when it came to money and power. I hired a private investigator to look into her claims, and I got some shocking footage, her provoking arguments, yelling at me first, pushing me during fights. I had her on tape, trying to show that she was the one instigating trouble, not me. The financial aspect was even messier. Had managed to siphon off $250,000 without me noticing until it was almost too late. I found out she opened secret accounts, transferred money into offshore accounts, and even used fake invoices to justify large withdrawals. She'd been planning this for months, maybe years. She bought a house with Jake, a new car, and a bunch of designer clothes, all with money she stole from us. I hired a forensic accountant who traced every dollar, and what we found was staggering. She had lied about her expenses, hidden assets, and even forged documents to cover her tracks. The worst part was realizing she'd been lying about her feelings about us. She told her friends I was abusive, controlling, and emotionally unstable, things I knew weren't true. She'd been spreading rumors, trying to turn everyone against me. I felt like I was fighting a war on multiple fronts. My reputation was at stake, my finances were drained, and my marriage was in shambles. I had to stay strong, stay calm, and keep pushing forward. I couldn't let her win this. She was determined to take everything I had built, but I wasn't going to let her. One night I found myself sitting alone, staring at all the documents and evidence I'd collected. I felt numb, exhausted, and betrayed. It was like I'd lost my best friend, my partner, the woman I thought I knew. The woman I loved. I wondered how she could be so cold, so calculating, how she could lie so effortlessly. I kept thinking about all the memories, the good times, the dreams we shared, and how they'd been replaced by this nightmare. I felt a deep sense of loss, but also a burning resolve to fight for what was rightfully mine. I reached out to friends and family, trying to find some support. Some told me to walk away, others told me to fight harder. But the one thing I knew for sure was that I couldn't let her get away with this. I had to stand my ground. I had to prove she'd been lying, stealing, and cheating. It was the only way I'd be able to move on, to reclaim my life. I didn't want revenge for revenge's sake, but I wanted justice. I wanted her to face the consequences of her actions and understand how deeply she'd betrayed me. This process has been the hardest thing I've ever gone through. Every day feels like a hope, despair, anger, and sadness all at once. But I'm holding on, knowing I have the truth on my side. I don't know how this will end yet, but I'm prepared to fight until the very end. I refuse to be a victim of her lies anymore. I just want to rebuild my life, even if that means starting from scratch. I've learned that trust is fragile, and sometimes love isn't enough to save you from betrayal. But I also know that I'll come out of this stronger, one way or another. The court hearings were a whirlwind, was doing everything she could to spin her story, painting me as the villain, claiming I was controlling and abusive, exaggerating every argument into some kind of assault. She brought in her own set of witnesses, friends that I'd yelled at her, that I was too aggressive, that I threw things during fights. None of it was true, but courts love sensational stories, and she knew how to play the victim card better than anyone. I had my evidence, though. My lawyer presented every piece of proof I had. The bank statements showing the siphoned money, the texts where admitted to her affair, the videos of her provoking me during fights, and the forensic accountant's report detailing her financial manipulations. I could see the judge listening carefully, the expressions on witnesses wavering as they realized I had the facts on my side. Still, I knew she'd fight dirty, and I had to be prepared for that. Meanwhile, lawyer filed a motion to have her claims of abuse dismissed, claiming they were fabricated. They argued that she was a victim of my controlling nature, but I had witnesses and evidence to counter that. I also requested a forensic evaluation of our finances, which confirmed she'd stolen a significant amount of money and hidden assets. The judge seemed to take my side, but I knew the process was far from over. One of the most gut-wrenching moments was when lawyer suggested that I was violent and that I'd threatened her. I had to sit through hours of cross-examination, feeling like I was on trial myself. I stayed calm, answered every question honestly, and kept my evidence ready. I knew the truth was on my side, but I also knew how good was at twisting facts. That's when I realized I had to be even more meticulous. No slip-ups, no mistakes. The emotional toll was brutal. I'd wake up every morning feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. Every day was a mix of anger, frustration, and sadness. I kept asking myself how I could have been so blind, how I didn't see her true nature earlier. I'd loved her, trusted her, built a life with her. And now I was fighting just to keep what was mine. The betrayal cut deep, and I carried that pain with me into every court session, every meeting with my lawyer. At the same time, I was trying to stay strong for myself. I started therapy just to handle the emotional. I also reached out to some old friends who knew us both, hoping they could give me honest perspectives. I needed support, even if it was just to keep from falling apart. I learned that the legal system is complicated and that the truth isn't always enough. Sometimes, you need a good lawyer, good evidence, and a lot of patience. Through all this, I also made a decision. I wasn't going to let her take everything without a fight. I filed for full custody of the house and the assets I knew I was entitled to. I wanted to cut her out of my life completely. No more lies, no more games. I knew she'd try to manipulate the system, but I was determined to see this through. Her lies had caused enough damage. I needed to reclaim my dignity and my future. This whole process has changed me. I used to believe in happily ever after, in trust and honesty. Now I see that sometimes people betray the ones they love most, and you have to fight tooth and nail just to survive. I've learned that the truth is your strongest weapon, but also that the fight for justice can be exhausting. Still, I refuse to give up. I will keep fighting for what's rightfully mine, no matter how ugly it gets. Because at the end of the day, I want to look in the mirror and know I did everything I could to stand tall against her lies and manipulations. The final court date came and went, and I won't pretend it was easy. Lies were exposed, her manipulations laid bare, and her claims of abuse dismissed as baseless. The judge awarded me full custody of the house and the majority of our assets, and she was ordered to return the stolen money, though I know she'll fight that in appeal. Watching her leave the courtroom, her face twisted with fury and defiance, I felt a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. I'd fought hard and I'd won, but the damage was done. In the aftermath, I've been rebuilding my life piece by piece. I've moved out of the house we shared, now renting a small apartment where I can breathe without her shadow looming over me. I've cut off all contact with no more texts, no more calls, no more lies. It's been painful, but I know it's what I need to do to heal. I've also started seeing a therapist regularly, trying to process everything I've been through. The betrayal runs deep, and I realize it'll take time to truly move past it. Looking back, I realize how much I was blinded by love and trust. I always believed she was my partner, my best friend, but the truth is she was just using me to get what she wanted: money, independence, a new life with Jake. She lied about everything, and I was too trusting to see it. But I also learned that you have to be vigilant. People can hide their true selves behind a mask, and sometimes that mask is convincing enough to fool even the among us. The biggest lesson I take away is this: trust is fragile, and betrayal cuts deeper than I ever thought possible. But I also learned that even in the darkest moments, there's a way forward. I've come to accept that some relationships are beyond repair, and that's okay. Not everyone is meant to be in your life forever. Sometimes you have to let go for your own sanity and happiness. I want to share this story because I know there are others out there who might be going through similar pain. If you suspect your partner is cheating or hiding something, don't ignore it. Look for the signs, gather evidence if you need to, and don't be afraid to fight for yourself. Trust your instincts. And if you find yourself betrayed, remember, it's not the end. It's a new beginning. You can rebuild, you can recover, and you can come out stronger on the other side. This whole experience has taught me the importance of self-respect and resilience. I've learned that I am capable of surviving the worst, and that sometimes the only way forward is to face the truth head-on. I hope anyone reading this who's in a similar situation finds the strength to do what's necessary. Because at the end of the day, the most important thing is to protect your heart and your future, no matter how much it hurts in the moment.